Welcome to Haslip Works. I'm Robert, and today we're going to continue working on Project Minitrike. If you remember in our previous videos, we got our frame built, we got our seat built, we made it a roller, we got our Predator 212 built and fired up, and in the last one we fabbed up a gas tank and mounted that. So there's not a lot left to do. We're going to get our rear brake setup complete, we're going to get our rear sprocket on, we're going to get our clutch on. Okay, so what you just saw in the time lapse there was getting our sprocket and disc brake adapters ready to go on our axle for Project Minitrike. The sprocket you saw me take off is actually a 71 tooth. The problem with that is it's so big, it was actually going to touch the ground before the tires did. And it was, to be honest, probably the wrong gear ratio anyway. So I went ahead and put a 55 tooth on it. I also have a 60 and a couple others so we can play around with the gear ratio and get it just right. And that's why I absolutely love these quick sprocket adapters. 6 bolts and nuts, you take them off and you can change it to whatever you want. And there's a huge spectrum of available sprockets. The next thing that we put on our axle was our disc brake. Now that disc, the actual disc brake, came off a larger go-kart, like a 150cc multi-speed independent suspension kind of go-kart, and the adapter that sits on is a drum brake adapter for a 1 1/4 inch axle. That's why you saw me put that filler piece in that goes between our 1 inch axle and the 1 1/4 inch opening. But what you didn't see me do was I set our caliper on top of our rotor just real loose, zip tied it to where we kind of wanted it, just to kind of check fitment. And I wanted it to be as close as possible to this back leg of the frame so that we don't have some really long piece welded here that bolts to the caliper and it's going to get all wonky and be unstable and everything. So with the braking and stuff, we don't want to screw around. So I want that as solid as possible. So it's as close as it can be there. And I've also went ahead and just zip tied our braided stainless brake line down just to make sure it's the right length, and that's going to go to where we need on our handlebars. This braided stainless line is from Too Fast Moto on eBay, and they sell these and they're very inexpensive for what they are, and that's why I keep using them. But you can get them in different lengths. I think you can even get different ends on them, different angles for the banjo fittings. The caliper is actually from a pit bike. Get them on Amazon, eBay all day long. The braided stainless line runs up the frame to the handlebars to our brake master cylinder. And this is also for a pit bike. They're all metal, and they also have this cool feature where we've got a built-in parking brake. So if I park this thing on a hill or on a driveway, I don't have to worry about it rolling backwards. Pretty cool. So I've got that on, and none of these are tight, just twist it on so we can make sure everything's going to line up. I also went ahead and mounted our kill switch. What we need to do now, so we got everything kind of roughed in. I need to fabricate the bracket for that rear caliper, and we need to cinch down everything on the axle, put our keys in, and tighten everything up. We also have to put our clutch on the motor. For that, I'm just going to do one of the cheaper centrifugal clutches, and then we got a stringer chain. And I think the only thing we really have left to do once we tighten up everything is to fill our master cylinder with fluid, bleed it all the way back, make sure it works, and wire up our kill switch. Yeah, I'm going to quit talking and we're going to get to work. I had to modify our brake caliper a little bit for our application. The caliper has a little bracket attached to it that had 2 holes in it, and they were threaded. I didn't trust that a whole lot. The bracket itself on the caliper was less than a 1/4 inch thick. It maybe had 2 or 3 full rotations of thread cut into it. I just don't trust that. So what I've done is took 2 bolts that fit that thread on the bracket for the caliper, cut the heads off the bolts, ran them through, and then fusion welded on the back side and ground that down. I then made a real simple bracket that will weld to the rear down leg of this frame where we want our caliper. And that's got 2 corresponding holes in it that the bolts, now I guess you would call them studs, on the caliper bracket slide through. And then you put your lock nuts on the other side of that locks it in place. It seems pretty sturdy. I need to finish welding that bracket to the frame, but I'll show you what it looks like. This is the bracket that I made. Here are the studs and the nuts holding it on. Now the reason why I didn't just drill the holes out on the original caliper bracket becomes very clear when you look right here. There's very little room between our disc and that bracket. So I don't know what kind of fastener you can run through that without causing interference issues. Everything's pretty tight here as far as clearances go, to the point that I'm actually going to have to flip these nuts and bolts around on our axle bearings so that they protrude out towards the wheel instead of towards the brake. It's just too close for comfort there. So what I'm going to do is weld that bracket that I made completely. It's just tacked in right now. I'm going to weld it in completely, rotate everything around. Right now it looks good. Everything moves freely, and I'm going to weld that bracket in fully, and then it's just a matter of cinching down our brake lines, filling our master cylinder, and bleeding it. Not really going to bore you guys with that. I'm afraid that this video is going to run too long. In the next video on Project Minitrike, we'll pick up where we're leaving off here, and I will have the brake system bled and ready to go. I don't want to bore you guys with that. That's very little entertainment quality there. We still have to wire up our kill switch. Again, that's real basic. The wire's already on the Predator motor that you run to. Real simple. Nothing really cool to see there. With any luck, we should be able to fire this thing up and take it for its initial test run. I'm pretty excited to do that. I want to see what this thing's going to do. So yeah, if you're digging this build so far, make sure you stay tuned and you're subscribed so that you don't miss anything on this build. I've actually got a couple things coming in for this. Axle collars, some connectors, and that sort of thing that I'm waiting on anyway, so we couldn't really take it for a ride. Yeah, I'm going to call it here, guys. Definitely stay tuned. As soon as those parts come in, I'm going to be on this thing. I want to get it out there. I'm sure a lot of you guys are waiting to see how it's going to run. I know I'm kind of leaving you hanging, and I'm sorry, but I don't want this video to run too long. And I'm rambling again, so now's a good time for me to cut it here. But stay tuned. This thing's going to be a beast, I can tell. Until next time, guys, get up, get out there, and do it.